Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Welcome, and thank you, viewers, for watching today and for joining us. Thanks for your patience as we took a small break to just enjoy some downtime for the summer, and as we continue to plan for the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum. Just to remind everyone, the forum, what we do, we inform, inspire, and motivate the next generation of workforce talent to join the energy industry. And our two guests today will do exactly that. I'm thrilled that Laurie Dowling and Ron Brisé are with us today. Laurie, who is the Executive Director of the National Utility Diversity Council, is with us all the way from California. You got to love technology and digital technology. Laurie, I can see you. There you are.
Good day.
And Ron Brisé, who heads up the government affairs team with the Gunster law firm. Let's do some more formal introductions of your organizations, Laurie. Let's start with you. You want to tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and what the purpose of NUDC is?
Sure, thank you. And Lila, thank you for letting us be part of your day today. We really appreciate it. So my name is Laurie Dowling, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Utilities Diversity Council. We're a national nonprofit organization that educates, develops best practices, and guides efforts that promote diversity in utilities and communications industries in the areas of governance, procurement, employment, language access, customer service, and philanthropy. What that means for us is that we undertake a number of programs that are free for anyone, webinars, virtual panels, toolkits, white papers. All of our work is free because we really don't want there to be a barrier between any company, any agency, or any person and their ability to advance diversity.
Thank you, Laurie. And Ron, you've been a critical component of the start of NUDC, and a little bit later we're going to talk about the Diversity Toolkit, which I know is near and dear to your heart. But what do you do for your day job, Ron?
First of all, I want to thank you, Lila, for the opportunity to be part of this conversation with my friend and colleague, Laurie. And so thank you for, engaging in this conversation. So in my day job, I help corral legislators and regulators, and all kidding aside, I lead a team of professionals that help people get an understanding of how government works and how government can work for businesses, and how we can influence the process so that the process will work well for that constituency. And in our work, we try to ensure that people are well represented, and that all viewpoints are given a fair shot. And so that's what I do on a daily basis.
And Ron, you're one of the most humble people I've ever met. And in case our viewers or listeners don't know, Ron is the former chair of the Florida Public Service Commission and also a former member of the Florida House of Representatives, and very active in the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners while you served on the PSC. While that's a way of recognizing your hard work and your career, it's also an acknowledgement, Ron, that you have seen a lot in your profession that probably served to inspire your commitment to the work of the National Utility Diversity Council. Can you, what does inspire you to stay that involved in these issues?
Sure. One of the things that when I was a legislator was part and parcel to sort of the basis of what I was doing was opportunity, access to opportunity. And my firm belief is that everyone should have access to equal opportunity. And I think that the role of the Utility Diversity Council, I think the role of commissions, I think the role of houses of representatives and Senate and government is supposed to level the playing field for everyone. And it shouldn't, your zip code, your where you went to school and all those things shouldn't predetermine the opportunities that are available to you. And I think the work that we collectively do ensure that we create a path forward for people to have access to information, which is key. And then number two, access to how to use that information in a way that allows them to move forward in the space that they want to move forward in.
Absolutely. Which you and I both know just from our own work. And in doing so, they create opportunities for others around them, right?
Absolutely.
So they're creating jobs, not just for their family members, but for they become an anchor tenant, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very much an opportunity for others to learn, replicate, and maybe even pay it forward, right? At least that's what we hope.
That's right.
So, Laurie, how does the mission of the NUDC fulfill those kinds of things that Ron and I are describing?
Well, I think that it goes to the core of our mission, Lila, and I would call out something that one of our board members likes to say, which is you either believe in equality or you don't. And if I don't really think there's a gray area around equal. There are a lot of misunderstandings about how it evinces itself, but there is, you really are either interested in making sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed, or you aren't. So for NUDC, a large part of what we look at is opportunities around workforce development, and so specifically when we think about creating equal opportunity within the workforce, there are a couple of key areas that we like to look at. Part of it is, what are the barriers in education? What are the barriers to opportunities for 4-year degrees, 2-year college opportunities, technical training of whatever sort that would keep somebody from the workforce. So we collaborate a lot with educational institutions to try to help address that. What are the experiences of people in getting hired? Is your hiring process equitable? Is it are you eliminating barriers to hiring and onboarding? And then looking at your management pipeline and your talent pipeline. We know lots of data tells us that the talent pipeline, as somebody moves through a company, narrows exponentially as you go up towards the top of the company. So from starting your job to being CEO, that pipeline narrows. But what we also know is that the pipeline narrows inequitably for women, people of color, LGBT folks, and people with a disability. And so part of what we want to try to do is to help companies see that and move that to a more fair pipeline.
And for the most part, Laurie, do you find that companies are receptive to, one, the dialogue, and two, the tools that you've brought to their attention to enable them to, expand that talent pool, right?
I think companies are very receptive to the dialogue, Lila, more now than ever. The reckoning that has been taking place in the last 12 months, especially in this country around racial equity, has, I think, opened people's minds and hearts even more to the conversation around diversity and inclusion. At least, I don't know if that's what you see, but it seems that to be the case for me. And so I think more and more companies and agencies, regulatory agencies as well, and when I say companies, I mean small and large, they're coming to the conversation with open hearts and minds. But I think a lot of times they don't have the tools or even necessarily know where to find the tools to help them manage that journey. And we can help them with tools that we make that are free, or referrals to people that they can talk to for more information.
Great. Ron, we have our first question from a viewer, and I'm going to pose it to you. Viewer asks, very often companies will say they cannot find applicants of minority and women applicants. How do you respond to that?
I would respond that generally they're probably not looking in the right places. And so what we think are some of the answers to that is, one, consider where your recruitment occurs. I mean, what schools? There are minority serving institutions. There are Hispanic serving institutions. There are African American or HBCUs serving institutions. And so these institutions create an opportunity for companies to recruit. The other thing is that there are, in colleges across the country, that the community colleges and state colleges, there are opportunities there because many of these institutions partner with industry to create programs specifically to help students be prepared for workforce ready jobs or for career ready jobs. And very often that linkage isn't made appropriately. Very often state agencies, I know in our state you have like Career Source, and I think other states across the country have the equivalent in institutions and entities that do an excellent job of trying to enlist people to secure jobs. And so I think identifying people, companies identifying and engaging with these entities would create opportunities for that. There are other entities such as Association of Blacks in Energy, you have NUDC, and many other entities that if there is a referral that is needed, not only to where they might look or sometimes specific people for certain levels of jobs or even board positions, there are resources out there for that to occur.
Absolutely. And if I might, Ron, I would only add two things to respond to the viewer's question. One is the power of personal networking. So it's not uncommon for us at Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum to get a question from a company or even a potential candidate wanting an introduction. And I would say to all of us, be generous in making that introduction, because people just want the opportunity. And opening those doors, something we should all be willing to do. And the second thing, we actually had a comment come through the screen. Historically, Black colleges and universities are a great resource to post jobs, to seek candidates, and should not be forgotten at all. Of course, here in Florida, we've got a great one in Florida A&M, and we've got Bethune-Cookman. So we definitely have those tools. And if I said two, but I'll bring up a third thing and ask it in the form of a question. It's been my experience, Laurie, that sometimes organizations don't read through their job postings enough to understand that have you overqualified everyone who could be thinking about applying with your organization. If you build your job description based on all the wonderful things the outgoing candidate was able to do, is that really the best way to advertise? Because sometimes those postings can be intimidating and don't take into account that your new person may need to ramp up experience as opposed to be walk-in ready.
I think you're absolutely right, Lila. And I think the other thing that happens often in posting jobs is I'll use one as an example. Let's say that you were looking for a senior manager, maybe even a sort of beginning level executive, and you indicated that you needed 15 years of work in the utility industry. Now, if you take a look at that, what you may find is that the first 10 years of those 15 years were dues paying that could be in any industry in the world, right? And the 5 years that you needed to have, senior management experience in the industry are the ones that you really need to focus on. I think a lot of times what we'll find is that kind of job, you almost call it experience inflation, for lack of a better term, really disqualifies women and people of color, because we may be a little bit newer to the party, but we may have exactly the relevant experience from another industry, or just the key years that we would need. We bring those with us, but the extra years we may not.
Right. So Ron, I was sharing with you and Laurie before we got started on the live show that I've just become a certified women-owned business. Thank you. But I have to tell you, as I shared with you earlier, Ron, I felt like my legal degree, my law degree came into play. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And lots of paperwork, lots of forms, right? And not just a simple attestation, which of course we want companies to be accountable. But this is before you even apply for an opportunity. So my question to you is, does NUDC work with candidates or organizations, or even frankly the utility companies, to say, hey, look, what are those best practices to enhance your minority supplier programs without creating hurdles along the way?
Well, thank you for asking that, because actually it's interesting. That's a topic that we've been talking about a little bit. And the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, NARUC, has been talking about it as well. In fact, I think that the board did a resolution in the February meeting around encouraging companies to really look at the requirements that they are placing on their diverse vendors with regards to certification, not to ease them, but are there ways to make it just a little bit more user-friendly? I will say that at NUDC, of course, we don't certify, but we work a lot with organizations that do. WeBank, the National Minority Supplier Development Council, NMSDC, the NGLCC, the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, Disability In has now started certifying as well. And a lot of those entities will help and hold the hand of the enterprise that's trying to certify through the process. What we wish, someday when our wishes are all granted at NUDC, we'd love to see a universal form that was applicable across all entities. So, for example, if you were certifying as a woman-owned business and you were certifying as an LGBT plus owned business, if you could use the same form and have universal certification with both entities, it might make it a little bit easier for you. I know that WeBank and NGLCC actually are working together on something like that. But if you could do that across the board, that, you have to do one certification, but maybe you only have to do one, so it's a little bit easier and, less time consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. So take everything I just said and multiply it by 10, because of course the application was submitted during COVID when the state agency was practically closed. I mean, I found myself, obviously you have to really want it to go through the process. But I'll tell you, with every page, with every attestation, I found myself wondering, well, what does that next person do who might be intimidated by this form? And does he or she really have to submit all of this information before they have an opportunity? So it's and is all of that information really relevant to the line of work they're interested in even? So it's a very rigorous process. We've got a comment here from a member listening. The certification process is a beast. It really was.
It really can be.
So you mentioned NARUC. Ron, what is the affiliation between NARUC and NUDC? And is that support vital to what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so I would say that the partnership between NUDC and NARUC is vital to the success of both organizations, I believe. I think NUDC adds a wonderful component to NARUC, helping keep NARUC focused on the issues of diversity and inclusion and equity across the board. And in some cases, NUDC does the legwork for NARUC in some aspects. You know, we talk about the Supplier Diversity Toolkit, which it was a combination or a partnership between NUDC, NARUC, and others. And really the information that helped populate the toolkit was derived from commissions. So commissions had to provide information, and that information would make it easier for diverse suppliers to actually engage with the utilities within their state. And so having the blessing of individual commissions basically said to those diverse suppliers, hey, the commission is interested in you doing business with the utilities within our state. It is something that we are interested in. It is something that as a commission we bless, and we think it's good for our industry. It's good for our economy as a state, and it's good for the future of the industry overall.
So, Laurie, you and I know, again, this is a sign of Ron's humility, right? I remember when I served on the commission, anytime any regulator asked a question about diversity or whether it was vendors or the diversity of a workforce, we were very quickly reminded what the jurisdiction of the commission was or wasn't, right? And so Ron played a critical role in encouraging and creating that toolkit, right? Do you want to elaborate on that, Laurie, a bit? Because you know Ron's not going to.
Sure. Well, I would first say that, you know, I would agree with everything that Ron just said about our relationship with NARUC. I consider us cousins. You know, we all go to family dinner together and we love each other a lot. But we don't have to live together all the time.
Right.
So it works out perfectly for everyone. We have collaborated with NARUC on a couple of resources, all of which, you know, again, are free. So that's useful. We started with the Supplier Diversity Toolkit, and then and Ron was very kindly the chair of the task force that helped create that. That was like really herding cats, I will tell you, because we had never done anything. None of us had ever done anything like it. And then together with NARUC and the Department of Energy, we created what is now the Diversity Toolkit that we use today. It's called, yes, there it is on the screen, diversitytoolkit.com. That would be because .org was already taken. But it's a free resource that has a number of buckets that focus on aspects of diversity. And each bucket is populated with various aspects. And Ron was the chair of that task force as well. And that was put together with representatives from all industry associations, from companies, from state commissions, as well as academics and others, the RAND Corporation and others that were able to help us with key insights around aspects of what we were trying to measure. Because what we were trying to measure and what that toolkit does measure is a little different than what has been done anywhere else in the utility industry to date. One of the things that I'll, just as a shameless plug, I'll mention is that speaking of minority serving institutions, you know, one of the things we thought about was what worried us was that perhaps a lot of places look in the same place at the same universities every year when they're recruiting, right? But they're interested in a different outcome. So, you know, I went to college. I went to the University of North Carolina, and what they taught me is this: if you look for this, if you try to undertake the same practice and expect a different outcome, there's a definition there. And I'm not going to throw out.
I think it's insanity, right?
That's what
insanity. No, I'll throw it out. If you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, insanity, yes.
So what we wanted to do was to make things just a little bit easier for the recruiters, because recruiters in companies are really overworked all the time. You know, they need to source a lot of talent. They also need to go and do career fair. You know, it's a lot on their plate. And so in order to make it easier for companies to think about minority serving institutions, we've actually created a bucket within the toolkit that's called the Guide to Minority Serving Institutions. And it sorts by, so one of the things that we did is we put together a list of all of the jobs that are done in the utility industry. And from that, we figured what are the usual majors of field of study that you're going to find in those jobs. And so what you can do is you can go into the toolkit, you can sort by the major field of study. Let's say I would like to hire a chemist. I would like to hire an engineer. And you can see what minority serving institutions in your state have those majors. And then you can click on the site for that particular institution, let's say, Florida A&M, and it'll take you to the Career Center for Florida A&M that will tell you how to post a job so that your team doesn't have to do a lot of research. We've done that for you. And important to keep in mind that there are so many ways, this is almost the end of the shameless MSI plug. There's so many other ways in addition to recruiting that companies can have deep relationships and with a minority serving institution. And we've been collaborating. We just finished the first round of it with the Center for Energy Workforce Development, CEWD, on a couple of programs that help show examples of how companies can work with minority serving institutions. One of which was a collaboration with the American Associations of Blacks in Energy, Jackson State University, Entergy, and the Arkansas Electric Cooperative. And that was a fantastic mentoring program that really helped young students. And oh my God, these kids, some of them have 5+ point grade point average. I didn't even get a 5.0, right? Tremendously talented young people to sort of think about how to onboard themselves into a company, because nobody really teaches you that. Like what's it going to be like to get them not to treat you like an intern, right? And your first job, how do you handle this first social setting that you have to go to as a professional employee? Those kinds of sort of
practical, very practical things that you may or may not get in school, depending on the school. Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
every MSI is hungry for collaborations with companies, and they, I've now hired. My husband worked for a minority serving institution for many years. I've hired a lot of students. They've always been fantastic. One of our local MSIs is Cal Poly Pomona, which is a Hispanic serving institution, and it's a great resource. The National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine calls it a treasure trove. And they released a really great study that if anybody wants to email me for it, I'll be happy to send it to you in 2018, specifically looking at minority serving institutions and what they can mean to the STEM fields.
Well, so on STEM, Ron, many people don't know that you're actually a former teacher. And so with regard to STEM, and I'm going to come back to NUDC in just a minute, Laurie, but with regard to STEM, what more can be done at that early childhood level, Ron, to encourage children to embrace STEM-related careers?
Yeah, that's a critical component of a gap that sometimes exists across the board, and that is the strength that is necessary in, math, science, technology, engineering, and if you want to add the STEAM and make the arts as well there. And that goes to, the concept of where your school is, right? And how your zip code impacts how much funding your school gets and all of that. And that's a thing that I think companies can play a major role in being supporters of the community.
Right.
And in partnering with schools at an early stage and helping students gain an interest in STEM in a non-traditional way. And there's some companies in Florida that do that very well. Right. They'll go into schools and they'll teach about solar energy. They'll help with, they'll support robotics clubs and all these types of different activities, which ultimately help students gain an interest. And by gaining that interest, they begin to really engage in the study of mathematics, science, and other technology related fields, but making sure that our kids understand how to develop those stepping stones or building blocks to science is essential. And so therefore, I think it is part of corporate responsibility to ensure that our schools, our education system, whether it's the college education system, teaching teachers how to teach math and science, and ensuring that we provide the support necessary within communities so that students can learn the basics of math and science, even if they decide that that's not something they want to go into. We all do math and science every day and don't even think about it.
Right, right. What did you used to teach, Ron?
I taught biology, anatomy, and physiology, and every once in a while I would teach a physics class.
Can you imagine? I said, Ron, I want to go back to school just to take a class with you.
Really?
Laurie, we've got a question from a viewer. What prompted your involvement in this work?
Oh gosh. Well, thank you for asking that, viewer. I'm actually an actor by training. I went to drama school and everything. And at one point in my early drama school days, I noticed that all of the people who were better than me weren't getting any work. And I thought that was a really important piece of information for my future. So I left the drama school universe and went to work in a variety of capacities as a nonprofit manager. And prior to being part of NUDC, I actually ran a division at the UCLA Anderson School of Management, and specifically working in diversity in executive education. And so I had done a lot of work with a number of the NUDC board members in my other capacity. So when they were looking for someone to come in and help, especially my great and good friend Janice Bryant Howroyd of Act One, said, hey, maybe Laurie, this would be something that you'd be interested in. And so that was 10 years ago, and it's been such a happy day ever since.
She's exceptional. She really
Absolutely.
is. She really is.
She should just run the world.
Yeah, we had her come and speak at one of the Big Bend Minority Chamber events here in Tallahassee, and just so inspirational. The two of you are so inspirational. I have to tell you, I could listen to you talk about this for hours. How do you know that what you're doing at NUDC is working? Are you able to track the number of companies that are downloading the toolkit, Laurie? Are you hearing from them? It's a good product, very useful.
Yes, and I guess is what I would say. So we do track, how many people visit the toolkit. The toolkit, it's all free, so you can download or just use it online as you feel. And there's boatloads of stuff, including a resource guide of all of the other organizations that we think are doing good work around diversity, if you're looking for aspects of it, and a reading list, et cetera. But I would say that one of the ways that I can see that the utility industry is advancing in diversity is the conversation. I look back 10 years ago, and Ron, I think that's about exactly the moment that I met you. The conversation has changed so dramatically, and it's changed at the corporate level. It's changed among diverse suppliers, among employees, and among regulators. And, one of the things that we're going to be adding to the toolkit any minute now, when we can get the technology, the sorting technology, not the front office, but the back office side to work exactly the way we want, is a commission diversity bucket. And it allows you to look
near and dear to my heart.
It allows you to look at the what actions the various kinds of actions that commissions are taking around diversity. And if you look right now, when I first started doing this with NUDC, there were really two places, Maryland and California, that had done primarily. That was about it. DC had an MOU that was sort of gathering dust at that point. It hadn't really been addressed very much. When Betty Ann Kane became the chair, she sort of pulled that out and said, let's take a look at it again. And now Chair Phillips has really revamped it. But now when you look, it's Wisconsin, it's Minnesota, it's Missouri, it's Mississippi, it's, this North Carolina. different states are taking different paths, but they're all moving. And I think that's an indication that this conversation is elevating very significantly.
Yeah, I think absolutely, Laurie. No one can deny we're making progress, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you touched on something, and no kidding, it's really one of my pet peeves. I think that for regulators to encourage companies to be more diverse in their practices as it relates to their own workforce or in procurement, then our state commissions have to reflect diversity as well, right? So not only do the companies need to reflect the customers that they serve or their investors that they serve, really our state commissions, as we regulate those companies, should reflect that same diversity. And I have to say, certainly since I left the commission, I've seen progress, but it's always one decision away from going backwards.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And Ron, please feel free to chime in. It's sort of my gripe always. I watch out for that.
Yeah. So, the interesting part of this conversation, Lila, you mentioned something that when you were on the commission, they tried to put everybody in a box and say, you can't look at this, you can't look at that, and so forth. And to look at how far we've come, right, in terms of how it's become part of the everyday conversation, that now we can start moving the ball in areas that are much more meaningful than just, okay, let's see how many people you have, right? Now it's a matter of what is the quality of the positions that people have? What is the impact and investment that you are making in the communities that you serve? How are you investing in the communities that you don't traditionally invest in? And those are questions and issues that are being taken up. I remember when I first got elected into the House, there was a group of us legislators who were part of the Black Caucus who on every other Thursday, we would have a meeting with a agency head to sort of ask them, let's talk about your numbers, right? Because at the time there was a Supreme Court ruling in the state of Florida that, they couldn't do that carve out. So then we took it upon ourselves to say, okay, you can't do the carve out, but we want to know what you are affirmatively doing as an agency to move the ball forward. And I think the same thing has happened in the utility space, that companies are also realizing that their investors are interested in seeing diversity, because they realize that, the question about the business case is no longer a question, right? The reality is that when you have a more diverse board, when you have a diverse group of executives, when you have managers and middle managers and field operators that reflect the communities that you're serving, you get a better outcome.
It is business, right?
Right.
It's the right thing to do, but it is business.
Right. Yeah. So companies are reflecting that reality and acting within that reality, and which I think is good for the industry overall.
But Ron, one of the things I was always sensitive to from the dais was I didn't have to have jurisdiction over some issues just to be able to ask the question.
Right. That's right.
Companies react to the questions they're posed.
That's right.
And what happens, though, if you don't have a diverse commission or a diversity in agencies, then the chances that questions get asked might be less, right? That's not to say you have to be, a person of color to ask a question about diversity, right? Or a woman to ask a question about where you are in terms of workforce talent of women or LGBT to ask, right? That's not what I mean, but the question may less likely be asked if you don't have that kind of diversity in government. And I think I was always sensitive to my responsibility
Mhm.
in that regard.
So I'll give you a simple example of that. When I joined the commission, and many people know and some don't know, but I'm Haitian American. And so in the South Florida area, there's a lot of people who speak Haitian Creole.
Mhm,
And so the commission had information in Spanish,
mhm.
which made perfect sense. And so then I started to pose a question: why don't we have information, at least in South Florida and in the Orlando market, in Haitian Creole, right? And it's not a thing of people being malicious or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just not knowing, right? And not thinking about it. So with my presence on the commission, it became something that it was natural for me to ask that question. So therefore the commission started to move in that direction. When the commission started to move in that direction, the utilities started to move in that direction because it just made sense for us to do it. So then, as a result of that, the commission and I would say the industry became a lot more sensitive to language diversity throughout the state. Um, and so it's just little things like that that when one brings an experience to the table, that experience informs our decisions. And so I think every commissioner brings their own diverse set of experiences. And when they bring their whole self to the job, then they are able to impact the lives of everybody in a positive way.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. So we've got a question, Laurie, from a viewer. The question is, what advice would you give LGBTQ individual in terms of job, finding a job postings, making herself or himself more noticeable in terms of experience for a job?
Well, I think that depending on what kind of job you're looking for and where you're looking for it, I'm something that gives you just a little generic advice, if I may. First of all, I'll make you aware of a couple of wonderful resources. One of which is Out and Equal Workplace Advocates. It's a national organization. It's an association of companies that are trying to encourage opportunities for LGBT plus individuals in the workforce. So check them out. A company that is that lists on their website or on their hiring site that they collaborate with Out and Equal are likely to have really highly evolved practices around hiring. Another thing that you might want to think about is looking at the Human Rights Campaign's HRC scorecard. A company that gets 100 on the HRC they're doing platinum level best practices around working with their LGBT plus employees. So that would probably be a company that would be fun to work with. When you're thinking about whether or not you want to go to work for a company, one of the things you might want to do is take a look at their employee resource groups. Most companies have an LGBT plus employee resource group, and you might be able to reach out to somebody in the leadership of that group and ask what it's like to work there. Maybe they could give you some referrals or some key introductions as well. But those are the resources that I would look at. But I think one of the things that we're seeing, and there's been a lot of really great research on this. Mary Gentile, who's at the University of Virginia, is especially done some brilliant work on this over her career. What we're seeing is hopefully in the main, gone are the days when you have to try to pretend to be something that you're not. It's not healthy, and we have to get away from that. We can't create an environment where someone has to pretend to be someone that they're not to get a job and to keep a job. This is, we'll go back to do we believe in equality or do we not? But I would look at the HRC scorecard and where a company fits on it, and definitely look to see, on their hiring platforms, are they collaborating with Out and Equal? Those would be two good ways to check them out.
It's great advice, Laurie. Thank you. So as you both know, we have students that watched the program and attend the forum in October. Have I mentioned October 27th through the 29th in Orlando? And if you haven't registered, you really have to. It's flwomenenergy.com. Our theme is resilience. There's a morning dedicated to environmental justice. And so as you both know, we have students who attend the forum and listen to this podcast. So Ron, I'll ask you in our closing question here, what advice would you give that second year student looking to enter the energy workforce?
Don't be afraid to pursue the opportunities that you really want to pursue. A lot of times students will look at an opportunity and short sell themselves. And so therefore pursue those opportunities, identify resources too. I mean, identify community resources, individuals that work within the company or people who are in the periphery of the company that you're interested in, or people who are in the industry who can provide a little bit of guidance and support. And don't be afraid to engage someone to be your mentor. You know, not only a mentor, but also sometimes it's good to find a sponsor. And there's a distinction between the two. And so identifying people that will support you in those things. And then hard work never fails, right? Hard work never fails. So always do your homework, be prepared. You know, I went to HBCU, Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, and they always used to tell us, you know, you have to prepare 3 times as hard as you have to prepare 3 times as much as anybody else. So you have to be prepared. You have to work hard, 3 times as hard to be at step number 1 in comparison to some others. So I would say that applies to everyone. And so do your homework and use your resources on campus as well. Very often we don't value those resources that are around. And so take advantage of those opportunities. And when entities come on campus, engage with them, meaningfully engage with them. Don't just take a card and forget it. Use the card, connect. You never know how that exchange or engagement can help you in the future.
Absolutely. Great advice, Ron. Laurie, what about you?
Well, I would say, and thank you for letting me weigh in as well. I would say to any student out there that's thinking about looking for a job, any job in the coming market, the world is your oyster. This is going to be a job seekers economy for quite some time. We are short, especially in this country, of STEM graduates, people who have STEM education, and also people who are comfortable with 2-year or CTE degrees or stackable credentials. There's a lot of opportunity, especially in the utility industry. Any kind of job you want to do lives here. Do you want to do science? Some of the companies in the utility industry are doing cutting edge science. There's also amazing work being done in the national labs. It's like you know, the geek paradise on steroids to go there. Do you want to work in HR? Do you want to work in leadership development? Do you want to work in marketing? There's a job for everyone in the utility industry. And the thing about the utility industry is that even in the last 12 months, 18 months, when you see other industries dropping very dramatically, the utility industry stayed stable with employment. Yeah. So these are good jobs. They are
high wage, sustainable,
and they pay great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Ron and I think Ron would join me in saying, and please don't rule out government jobs.
Yeah.
Definitely that's how I started my career and learned so much. But you know what else I learned from the two of you today? So powerful. What you've done is really amazing on a national level, can be replicated though state by state. Congratulations on your collective hard work. thanks for being with us.
Wow,
Thank you for
thank
your
you.
ability to inform, inspire, and motivate. So much content. So thank you.
Thank
And
you.
please stay in touch. And Laurie, we're going to get you there to the forum. We're going to convince you in October to come over.
I
Thank
can't
you.
wait.
Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.